Once again, we just take this opportunity to warmly welcome everyone to these conversations. It's a series that we have started and it will run for the next 6 weeks. So there's various interesting and much required discussions that will be taking place under the theme, which is reshaping the local government landscape, the road ahead. Because we are all aware of the recent elections that took place, which indicated to us the new path within our local government sphere. So there's a rise in coalitions, there's increased participation of civil society and citizens in the running of our municipalities due to the failures that we have all witnessed in the past from our municipalities. So we hope and trust that our local government conversations will lead us to create a pathway and a platform for us to share the insights, policy matters, and critical issues that will surely bring change to our municipalities. With those words, thank you so much for joining us and participating going forward. Please do so and share your thoughts, share your ideas, because we want to also hear your views that you may have as we shape what we are going to actually be doing in the next coming 6 weeks. So at this time, if you can just allow me as well just to share a little bit further about this series. Will not take much time because we do have our main speaker who will be sharing more on the topic of today. Just bring up this slide. All right, there we go. Right, so just as a form of introducing the series, before I jump into this one here, see if I haven't left anything here. I've already made mention of the theme itself, which is reshaping local government landscape, the road ahead for our local government in South Africa. So at this time, because the main partners that we have is the Municipal Edge as well as Future Cities Africa. And I just want to introduce the Managing Director of Future Cities Africa, Mr. Dan Klassen, who will just come in and just share a bit about Future Cities Africa as well, and to welcome everyone into this session. Mr. Dan Klassen, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngcobo, and a warm welcome to all panelists and attendees. Just in a nutshell, Future Cities Africa is a thought leadership platform and a knowledge hub that get into the minds of business and city thought leaders who are shaping the future of African cities. We explore major trends, opportunities, projects, actions, challenges, and more that affect cities, businesses, and citizens. The content that we produce range from a variety of podcasts to video episodes, webinars, and much more. Visibility is the cornerstone of thought leadership. So please have a look at futurecitiesafrica.com. We do put out regular content on there, and if you want to be seen by your organization, want to be seen by a African, South African, and global audience, please do get in touch with us to learn more about what we do. Thank you, Doctor.
All right, appreciate it, Mr. Klassen. On Municipal Edge itself, I'm sure most of you may be aware of Municipal Edge, which is a resource that seeks to empower stakeholders in local government with pertinent issues that are trending within the sphere or the sector of local government, and then importantly, bridges the gap between strategizing and implementing some of the service delivery goals and objectives. But importantly, what it seeks to do is to bring in this excellence within local government, which is so severely lacking, because somehow, there is this take that local government is just government, and we don't need to apply some corporate style or excellence and values in the ethos that is applied within the business fraternity. But we do hope and trust that as we do all of these and share some of these thoughts and ideas on all that is being done and the best practices that are out there, we will then be able to forge a new pathway for our local government and the municipalities at large in our country. Supporting partners within the series, we have SALGA. We all know SALGA, as well as CIGFARO, the Chartered Institute of Government Finance, Audit and Risk Officers. We also have the Institute of Local Government Management, ILGM, which will also be coming through in one of the sessions that you're going to be having, as well as the South African Institute of Government auditors. The importance of why we are doing this, because we truly believe that as we connect and collaborate, we are going to be able to complement each other, because we're not trying to not to compete and trying to outshine everyone. We all faced with a common problem here in South Africa, and we know the challenges. And what becomes now important is how we all bring in our energies together to confront the problem and obviously overcome the challenges that are before us, which I truly believe, and I'm trust your good self as well, we will do so in time. The series, as said, in terms of the theme, I'm trusting that you have gone through this when you received the invite, but I thought I'll just put it up just to remind ourselves in terms of why are we doing this, and bring some understanding into what local government is all about, which is quite complex. For those who are involved in local government will understand what I'm talking about in terms of the complexity of local government, because there are issues of compliance, issues of reporting, and there is quite a number of regulations and policies that needs to be adhered to as you actually do that. And then now, part of the subject that we're talking about today, the issue of professionalization, because we definitely have to professionalize our local government, because at the end of the day, if we don't, we know what has happened before, but now we don't want to go through that path again. So we have to now do things differently, and hence now the introduction of professionalism. But I won't go too much into it, because we've got Dr. Maja who will be sharing on those this morning. And importantly, what we want to achieve is building this capable state. And for us to do that, we've got to address the fundamentals, and the issues of skills becomes highly important. Skills and leadership, because we cannot divorce those two, which is our political leadership. And ultimately, at the end, we all want to see improvement in our local government. So when we sent out the invitations, we also had a tab there where you can put in your questions that you may want us to address during the series. So these are the questions that have been received thus far. Just like the first one from Pikolomzi from the Council for Geoscience. We've got Malena from Rustenburg Local Municipality, Fabaza from Tata, Shuab for the Parliament of SA. So as we can see, we've got variety of participants within the series, which is well and good, so that we can then combine our minds going forward. I won't go through these questions, but just that you take note that we have documented them, and as you go along, we will then try by all means to address these questions. And also, even right now, when you do have any questions on the chat box, feel free to actually put in your question or any comment that you may have. And then some of the questions, once again, that we have received in relation to the series. Just briefly on local government issues, I won't dwell too much once again into this, but this is just a recent news. There's quite plenty of the same that I'm sure that as you go through some of the articles that are being shared pertaining to local government, you will find these. This is just on the 28th of January by the Witness, and the heading of it, the IFP-led council finally removes the acting municipal manager. Is it right? Well, we don't know the merit of it, but the question that we have to ask ourselves, perhaps maybe Mr. Govender was well competent to run the municipality. Yes, he was an acting MM, but perhaps he had competency. But because of political dynamics at play, then the acting municipal manager had to be suspended. We don't want to go into politics, we're not politicians, but then these are the issues that are confronting us. Like if you look at what was said in what I've highlighted in red, he was suspended. He was now removed because he suspended a senior official in the office now of the IFP mayor, Honorable Kulani Dube. So maybe that could have been right, maybe it could have been wrong, we don't know, but this is what is out there. And I'm hoping that it will touch on those. I've got a very good friend and somebody who I highly respect, Professor Mayaba, who knows these issues in detail, and I'm trusting he will also share some light on some of these things. And then importantly as well, this was shared by the Money Web in respect of ecosystems within local government, because we have to understand the systems that are there and also what has worked before, and where we are right now is because of the systems that are existing and are functional, and we need those systems to go on, because it's what shapes and mold our country, of the communities that we are at. And importantly, once again, with the newly elected councillors, they then need to understand the legal prescripts, which becomes very, very important, because for councils to be able to be functional, they must understand the foundations and the fundamentals of the legality of the land that they have to make sure that they actually apply and make use of for the respective councils. And also the issue of skills is made mention there by the article, which we'll touch on today. And then lastly, on the government issues, once again, the issue that has been touched upon, what I've highlighted in there is that municipalities should not only employ people with the right skills, but importantly, people with high integrity and commitment to serve in their community. We always say local government is not only about a career, but it becomes a calling, because you're a public servant and you have to make sure that you serve your respective community. So these are the issues, recent issues. There's quite plenty. You can always look into some of these articles. We always read them, go through them as Municipal Edge in Future Cities Africa, so that we can ensure that whatever we are crafting going forward is well informed by what is happening in the recent times. And then our sponsor for today, which we highly appreciate, because everything costs money, and we have to obviously have the sponsors coming in, contributors coming in, to make sure that we can deliver these very good programs, series, and other sessions to come. So the LSB, Leadership School of Business, they've given us this information, which I'll quickly run through. They aim to equip and empower humankind for leadership success, and they are an education and training institution primarily focused on leadership development, particularly for the public sector of South Africa. And the organization is driving public sector initiatives to ensure professionalization of the sector, especially local government, which is definitely in greater need of skilled and qualified public officials. And then lastly, what they subscribe to is the statement that was made by Kofi Annan: education is a human right with immense power to transform. On its foundation rest the cornerstones of freedom, democracy, and sustainable human development. I'm trusting we all subscribe to that. So now going into the session now for today, I've done some of the introductions and all of that, but let me just introduce now our panel members for today. Firstly, we have Mbali Ndlovu, currently the Municipal Manager at Ngcobo District Municipality and admitted attorney as well as conveyancer. So obviously she is much qualified in this respect. She has been a municipal manager since 2018, managing director of Mbasa Corporate Advisory Services between 2014 and 2018, has been a deputy municipal manager for the city of Ndlovu between the periods, as you can see on the screen, legal advisor in respect of the city of Ndlovu, land rights law researcher, and various, as you can see on the screen. And you'll get to actually hear that content that will also come out from, because we have had other engagements before, and she definitely knows the story. That is what I can assure you. And then also I've got two colleagues that are, as I've already mentioned, which I highly respect and work very closely with as well from my side. Dr. Pillay, who is the head of department in public management and economics at the Durban University of Technology, as well as with Professor Mayaba, a very good friend of mine. We're always talking local government, and is involved in quite a number of initiatives, as well as working very, very closely with SALGA, which is something that you will also hear when he comes in. And then our main speaker for today is Dr. Botshabelo Maja, the Deputy Director General in the National School of Government. He is responsible for the review, upgrading, and development of the new curriculum for training of the South African public servants, be it junior, middle, senior, as well as executive levels within the public sector. Previously has worked for the Department of Labor, as well as the National Business Initiative, Morteno Project, Human Sciences Research Council. And I liked when I went through his brief profile, that his degree, a PhD, and that he did at WITS was titled South African Urban Black Youth Capacity to Aspire. That is quite something that is very, very crucial, and we need for that will shape our country going forward. So at this time now, I will then be handing over to Dr. Maja, who will then be talking to us about the professionalization of the public sector, but with a focus on local government. My name is Emmanuel Ngcobo. Yes, I'm also one of the doctor, and I'm trusting that we're going to have a very good and fruitful engagements moving forward. And for me, I'm just also a public servant at heart, and that is what I aim to be until I leave, because that's my calling that I have, and we shall go on this journey together. So, Dr. Maja, over to you, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me try to share my screen so that we can begin with the conversation. Thank you very much. Colleagues, good morning. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm hoping that I'm audible and you can see both myself and the presentation, which I've now placed onto presentation mode. The conversation and the series that is being run is quite important because, as all of us know, local government touches all of us quite closely. The one sphere of government that is not theory is local government, because when things go wrong at local government, we feel it immediately. We feel it in our households. We feel it in everything that we're expected to do. So this conversation is quite important. And for us to be able to professionalize local government, we will have to do a number of things which maybe will require us to all put our hands to the wheel and make sure that these things that we keep talking about begin to happen. So I'm going to just do two things today in my conversation with you. I will be talking to what is it that we need to do to professionalize the public sector, and I deliberately use the words public sector and not public service because there will be a very definite bias in our conversation today on the implications of this professionalization for local government. So you will see that in a number of instances, I'll be at pains to point out what kinds of interventions should we be looking at with regards to professionalization and with a specific focus to local government. Now, let's start from the beginning. As we all know, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because many of you are very familiar with this, there are these foundations of local government. And Chapter 7 of the Constitution of the Republic is quite clear that local government must ensure the provision of services to communities in a sustainable manner. It must promote social and economic development. It must promote a safe and healthy environment, but more importantly, it must provide democratic government to local communities. There are certain provisions that continue in the Constitution around powers and functions in both Part B of Schedule 4 and also Part B of Schedule 5. These are the things that we all know. All of us who are sitting here today are familiar with the foundations of local government. But in simple terms, the ontological basis of local government is to make sure that communities have clean water, communities have safe sanitation, communities have refuse removal, and that local government is able to regulate land use for human settlement and industrial development. It's not an or, it's an and. Human settlement and industrial development. But what has happened? I'm not going to go into the details. We've already had the last speaker with us, the facilitator, sharing with all of us in this room the problems. You know, I don't like using the word challenge. Sometimes when you say something is a challenge, I feel like we're downgrading real problems. We have problems in local government because municipalities are beset with endless problems related to poor service delivery, whether it relates to sanitation, whether it's be about water, you name them. You look at the Institute for Security Studies and the service delivery protests that they've been capturing between January 2013 and April 2021. 65% of those service delivery protests have turned violent, and all of them looking at local government problems. We have seen, if you look at the report of the public protector, instances of an absence of qualifications. Because really, if you have municipal officials that have no more than a grade 11 qualification, we can no longer even call it unqualified or lowly qualified. It is a complete absence of qualifications. And we are seeing more and more examples of these kinds of lack of skills and qualifications, as the facilitator was referring to, which are besetting our local government sphere. You can even look at the Auditor General and the points that the Auditor General makes around the 3.4 billion of fruitless and wasteful expenditure that was reported in the 2019-2020 financial year. And that most of that was because of interest and penalties, which have formed a big part of fruitless and wasteful expenditure in local government. We can go on and on. We can actually write a book about the problems that are besetting our local government sphere. And I'm going to stop here talking about the problems of local government because they're all familiar with all of us who are here. So therefore, what should we do? Because really we're not here to lament and complain and cry. We're here to look forward. We're here to see what needs to happen for us to move forward. From where we stand at the National School of Government, we really strongly believe, and the president is very clear about this, it's time to go back to school. Councillors must be trained. They must be upskilled. They must be empowered to execute their duties. This week alone, since Monday, we've been running an ethical leadership and executive oversight program for councillors at the Buffalo City Municipality, because we believe strongly that we cannot just say it's time to go back to school, but it must happen. It's happening this week at Buffalo City Municipality. The reality is that councillors whom we all elect, ourselves who sit here, we elect these councillors, can be elected regardless of whether they have zero qualifications or experience. They can be elected. There is no requirement for us to elect councillors with certain qualifications and or experience. But what we need to do, as we've just seen with the recent local government elections, once that has happened, we should encourage them to return to the school to be able to write and read policy documents and budgets and be able to make prudent decisions on matters affecting their communities. But to do that, of course, one of the things we don't do enough of in our country and at local government, you see this, we never conduct what we call skills audits, because you can't just train people for the sake of training them. You need to know who are these people, what competencies do they already possess, what skills do they bring with them and experience. That is part of your skills audit, which will then help determine what their training and development needs should be. And this would then form part of a broader project of building a new generation of ethical public servants, community leaders who can execute their duties diligently and who can also use public funds efficiently whilst they're being accountable to the citizens of the country. So we've developed a framework, which we call a national implementation framework for the professionalization of the public sector. Cabinet has approved it. We've consulted on this framework in the last year. From last year, February, we've concluded all those consultations. We've received a lot of inputs from different stakeholders, more importantly from stakeholders in the local government sphere, because we believe that once Cabinet approves the final framework, which we are hoping to take back to Cabinet in the next 2 to 3 months, that will form the foundation of our intervention at national government, at provincial government, and also at local government level, including at state-owned entities. A lot of the work that has to be done in our country cannot be done in pockets of islands. Municipalities, in as much as they are our main electricity distribution centers, they cannot do that if our state-owned entity, ESCOM, is not playing ball. So when we professionalize as part of this framework, we are keen that we cannot professionalize in bits and pieces. We have to tackle all these components of the state as part of what we call building state capacity, building state capability. So this work, we will have to then see how it can build into the relevant literature that we've looked at. We've looked at examples in the rest of the world. If you look at countries like China, for example, and their system of what they call meritocracy, which is a merit-based system. In China, you don't just wake up and become CEO of a state-owned entity. You don't just wake up and become a president. You don't just wake up and become a DDG. There is a system which is a merit-based system that you have to go through, that requires of you to prove your qualifications, to prove your skills, and to prove your experience in doing the things that are required to be done. And not just talking about the things that have to be done, but in doing them. The Chinese are very clear. You can talk all you want. They want to know, what have you done? We are hoping through this framework that we are taking back to Cabinet for final approval in the next few months, that we will move more and more from a talking state into a doing state. And that doing state will be applicable whether you are in a state-owned entity, national government, provincial government, or local government. So we will be developing an implementation framework out of this draft that we are taking to Cabinet. But in doing that, we will be recognizing the complexity of the public sector, given that there are different professions. So one of the things we will be requiring is that the public sector, in professionalizing it, we will require of its players to belong to professional bodies. Today, as we speak, you cannot be a CFO, a chief financial officer of a big conglomerate in this country, unless if you are a member of SALGA. And if, for whatever reason, your membership of SALGA is revoked, it automatically has implications for your position as a chief financial officer in that conglomerate. We are introducing the same for the public sector. We don't see why there must be a chief financial officer in the public sector who does not belong to a professional body in their field. We don't see why there must be a legal practitioner in the public sector who does not belong to a professional body in their field. Already as we speak, you cannot be a teacher in South Africa unless if you belong to the professional body responsible for teaching. You need to be licensed and certified by SACE for you to be able to teach children in this country. Why can't engineers who are supposed to be certifying maquis be required to also belong to professional bodies? We are aware that part of this complexity of the public sector will mean that there will be sectors where professional bodies do not exist. And in those, we will establish new professional bodies. One of the first professional bodies that we are earmarking is that which shall target senior managers. We want to establish a professional body aimed at senior managers in the public sector. But even with these professional bodies that already exist, I've mentioned two of them already, we will be engaging with them because we are fully aware that professional bodies that exist, not all of them are clean, not all of them have transformed, not all of them are doing the kinds of things they should be doing the right way. So it's not going to be a be-all and end-all where we just join and we work with every other professional body. We will take pains to engage each and every professional body to see whether they are fit for purpose for us to partner with them in terms of professionalizing the public sector. We will also have to then look at the profiles of the different categories of professions in the public sector, look at existing modes of external regulation and non-regulation that exist, and see how those affect the interventions that we hope to make in the professional body space as part of professionalizing the public sector. We are going to be focusing on three parts. When we professionalize, we believe that we must deal with the individual. Now, a lot of what has been said already talks to the individual. This is about skilling the individual, upskilling the individual, taking the individual back to school to make sure that they're able to execute their responsibilities diligently. That is the one part of professionalization that we will be dealing with. The second part, we will be focusing on what we call professionalization. The first one, we call it professionalism. The second one, we call it professionalization. Here we're looking at the sector itself. You cannot be professional as an individual if you find yourself working for that municipality that was dragging that poor councillor, that female councillor, who was being dragged, literally dragged through the floor of municipal offices 2 weeks ago. No matter how professional you are as an individual, if you end up in that municipality that drags people through the floor, your professionalism will be extremely limited. So we have to make sure that we also focus on the sector. The workspace has to be professional. We have to make sure that the institutions that we have are themselves professional. And we will have to have interventions that make sure that our institutions, whether it be in the local government sphere, provincial sphere, national sphere, are themselves professional. The last part I've spoken to it, which is the profession, and it has to do with the professional bodies that I was just talking about. But here is the killer. Because we're trying to do things here that we call game changers. We don't want to just do things for the sake of doing them. So why are we saying people must belong to professional bodies? We are dealing here in this third part that we call the profession. We are dealing with what is called consequence management. As things stand in this country, in the public sector, consequence management is limited to the employer and the employee. It is just those two entities, the employer and the employee, that are part of the consequence management space. We are introducing a third layer of consequence management through the professional body. So what it means is that if the employer and the employee are playing hide and seek instead of doing proper consequence management, the fact that the employee is required to belong to a professional body can and might mean that the professional body to which the employee belongs might take action against that person. And of course, the professional body can't fire the employee because the employer-employee relationship is not with the professional body. All they can do is to say, you've misbehaved, you can no longer be a member of our professional body, bye-bye. Once that has happened, we will have put rules and regulations in place that will then require these two people, the employer and the employee, to do something about that. Because the conditions of employment would have said, for you to be employed as a CFO or a legal practitioner, you need to belong to this professional body. So that's a third layer of consequence management that we're hoping to introduce through the professions. We'll be focusing across the public sector on 5 aspects, what we call the 5 pillars of professionalizing across the value chain. We cannot just start working on this problem when people are employed. We intend to work on this problem even before people are employed. So there are things that we are putting in place at pre-entry, at recruitment, and also at selection, so that we work very hard to get the best that is out there upfront. Already as we speak, you can never be shortlisted and or interviewed to work for government at a senior level unless you have successfully completed a pre-entry examination that we call Ngcobo. Today, as we speak, to be shortlisted and or interviewed for appointment in senior management, you have to have successfully completed Ngcobo, which is our pre-entry exam. It's an online pre-entry exam. We are looking at expanding that across the public sector, across all levels, because at the moment it's just targeting senior managers. I will come back to some of the issues around recruitment and selection, because we are making specific proposals to cabinet on what needs to happen across local, provincial, and national government to deal with issues of recruitment and selection. Once you've passed that hurdle and you are employed, we are going to be doing 2 things. One is an induction program. We now have in place an induction program. Remember, colleagues, we are talking back to school stuff here, because without going back to school, we will not be able to develop the requisite skills, expertise, and knowledge that are key to us serving our people. So we will induct you. We have an induction program that is aimed and being rolled out already from directors general all the way to levels 4 and 5 of government officials. Onboarding also for those that have been serving, we call it going back to the simulator. It is done in the airline industry. You can't say, I got my PhD 100 years ago, I'm still the doctor of the world. There's no such thing. Knowledge changes, knowledge evolves. You have to go back to refresh, you have to go back to upgrade. Even our cell phones, we upgrade them every day, despite the fact that we bought them brand new with the latest software. There are upgrades that we do on a daily basis. There will be planning, there will be performance management that we will have to do as part of the consequence management issues that we're talking about, but you can't just go in and discipline people. You need to make sure that they know the difference between wrong and right, they know the rules and regulations, they understand them, so that when you say then you've broken the following rules and regulations, you are both clear that they've had enough opportunities to upgrade themselves and develop themselves. Continuous learning and professional development will be key as we move forward, and so is career progression and also career excellence. So we've made a number of recommendations, some of which talk to the issues of recruitment and selection that I was talking about. Some of these will apply only at national and provincial. As the facilitator just indicated, local government is governed by different rules and regulations. We are sensitive to that. So some of these recommendations that we're making targeted at national and provincial, over time, we intend to cascade them to local government once the conditions are in place. And one of those conditions is the process that is being led through the Department of Public Service and Administration, where there are reviews currently underway of the Public Administration Management Act, the Public Service Act, and the Municipal Systems Act through our sister department, the Department of Local Government. The aim of these reviews is to synchronize and harmonize our laws and regulations in a way that will increasingly allow us to do some of these things that we can only do at national and provincial level at this stage, also to be able to do them at local government. So for example, we are making recommendations on strengthening the Public Service Commission, and that there must be in the appointments, in the interviews of deputy directors generals and directors generals, there must be an involvement of experts, and that the Public Service Commission itself needs to increasingly be involved in those interviews. We are aware that at local government, there is no Public Service Commission. So we'll have to have a conversation around it. There is a conversation around the appointment of the head of the public service. And this is a proposal that the National Development Plan had already made, and we are endorsing it in our proposal that we are taking to Cabinet. And we are suggesting that as such should be in the presidency, ideally that the DG in the presidency should be designated as the head of the public service. In the provinces, it would mean the provincial DG in the office of the premier. We will then have to say at local government level, what would that equivalent be? We also are talking about municipal administrations that do not fall under the public service legislative frames, as I've just indicated, and that there is no constitutionally independent regulatory authority that is equivalent to the Public Service Commission. Therefore, we will have to look at those mechanisms at the local sphere and how we can replicate what we've just spoken about at national and provincial. We are also suggesting the idea of open interviews. It's a principle, and we believe it needs to be mainstreamed in the recruitment and selection of senior appointments, whether it be DGs or heads of public service, whether it be the kinds of municipal managers that we were just talking about. We are trying to put in place transparency, fairness, openness in the processes that we undertake to recruit and select candidates for appointment. We are also saying we need to deal with the issue of tenure. So this case of the municipal manager that's just been removed because he is accused of pushing an ANC agenda. Talk to the issue of tenure. When people's tenure is not secured, they become vulnerable. And when they are vulnerable, you have a case similar to this director of security at the municipality in the Eastern Cape, who says in the video, I was told to make sure that this councillor is removed, whether it means dragging or flying her out. My job is to do what I'm told. It is when your security of tenure is threatened that some of these things that are really triggered by fear kick in. So we are suggesting that the tenure of directors generals and HODs and municipal managers should be 10 years. So when a municipal manager is appointed, it should be for a period of 10 years. We are also saying we need to harmonize our legislation to make sure that the interventions that we're talking about can be cascaded throughout the state. We are saying again that we need to deal with the political administrative interface. Yes, we talk a lot about bureaucracy in the recommendations that we take into cabinet, but we believe that ministers are equally key for the professionalization effort to achieve its intended objective. And because of this, a strong recommendation is that we should equally target politicians for us to stand any chance of being embedded in our interventions in the public service. Consequence management is key. The professional bodies are helping us to introduce a third layer there. Pre-entry training programs, tests, exams are going to be expanded across the public sector and across all levels. Yes, we will have to work with higher education institutions because one of the problems that we experience in the public sector is that the people who working for government, there is this thing, and it's unique to South Africa, that, you know, you must aspire, as the facilitator was saying. I've just finished a project on youth aspirations. So, you know, you must aspire to be a musician, you must aspire to be a doctor, you must aspire to be a CEO of a company. Or it is only when all those things have failed that your parents say to you, hey, why don't you try a job in government? You want to tell me that there are no jobs in government? We want to stop that. Government cannot be the place where those who failed elsewhere come here. Many of us who work for the state are very proud to work for the state. And many of us who work for the state don't believe that we are less of something than those who are elsewhere. So we have to institutionalize this pride in working for the state. And that pride, we have to work with higher education and say to higher education, who are your best matriculants that you are recruiting into your universities whom we want to become public servants? This thing that when you have 10 distinctions, you must go and be a biologist in the private sector. We need to undo it. In the US, you are respected, and my colleague might even attest to this, in law. If you are a lawyer in the United States and you've never worked for the State Department in the US, but you call yourself a lawyer, you are not taken seriously. They think you are a joke. Because those who've worked as lawyers for the state in the US are highly respected. We want to do the same here and here. I can make many other examples, whether it be in the UK, whether it be in China. So higher education has to help us there, and we'll be talking with higher education in that regard. We'll also be talking to professional bodies around collaborating and partnerships. Of course, we will have to strengthen our curriculum interventions to make sure that we do the kinds of things that we're looking at. We'll have to strengthen our internship interventions to make sure that they assist us in terms of the pipeline that we're looking at. We will have to expand this Ngcobo program that we were talking about, strengthen it, and make sure that it assists us to professionalize as we've been talking about. We will also be introducing integrity testing, because we believe integrity tests should be formalized as mandatory in the public service, but also look at how we expand that into local government so that we complement existing pre-employment screening exercises as prescribed in the public service regulations, to make sure we do basic background checks and make sure that we have resonance in the national integrity system. The SMS competency framework will have to also be looked at in terms of the appointment of senior managers. These are the interventions that we have proposed, which we believe will be critical in assisting our country to move forward, taking with us local government, provincial government, and national government. Oversight is key. We will have to deal with oversight and how those in charge of oversight will need to be strengthened and to be sure that they play their particular role in terms of the oversight responsibilities that are related to their work. Talent management and succession pipeline. In the 5 pillars that I was talking about, we talked about continuous professional development. It's about talent management and succession pipeline. We talked about career progression. It is also about talent management and a succession pipeline. So we are proposing that there must be a clear policy on succession planning in the public service. This thing of chance, lotto to be the next chief director, we need to find a way of dismantling it. It needs to be clear that these are the people, and it doesn't have to be one, because it does not mean you are nullifying competition. So it doesn't have to be that this person is now like a chief earmarked to be the next chief director. No, we don't do succession in terms of traditional forms where you are born to be a chief director or you are born to be a DG, but there has to be a pool that is created where we are clear that should this chief director move, these 4 or 5 people are ready, have been prepared as part of the pipeline to occupy that space. These 4, any of these 4 people, any of these 5 people can occupy that space. It's only a matter of when and who, which means that therefore there must be this continuous learning and professional development that we talk about. So all of this, colleagues, is really about service delivery. There's no need for us to have this conversation if we are not intending to change our terms of recognition, if we are not intending to develop this country, make sure that it becomes what we've always hoped it must be. So it's about service delivery. So when we do excellence and leadership development, it has to feed into service delivery. It must be relevant for service delivery. Thank you, sir, and that's my story from the side.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Maja. We truly appreciate what you've just shared to us. And even myself, I've actually learned something about the difference between professionalism and the word of the professionalization and how it actually applies in the context of local government and all that you have shared and the insights. Thank you so much. And I'm quite certain, there's quite a number of issues that I'm trusting when we start the engagement we'll draw upon in due time. So thank you so much, Dr. Maja, for that. At this time, without wasting much time, thank you so much as well to those who have sent through some questions and comments on the chat box. I appreciate that. Just keep them coming, and then we will see as we go along how we're going to address some of the questions posed. As said, by 12, we are trusting that we'll be finished. We will try by all means, but if you go slightly over, just bear with us. But our aim is that from 10 to 12 is our discussion time. So before I go on to bring in Mrs. Ndlovu to come in as the first panelist to share her views on what has just been touched on, there's just a poll that we want to put up. If you can just select your option so that we can just get a feel of your understanding from what we have just shared today. As you can see on your screen, the question is this approach that has been brought now by the National School of Government, what has been shared, do you feel it will bring some improvement to our local government? Because there's been talks of professionalization before, quite a number of years back, but then now there seems to be this focused direction that's been taken by the National School of Government. Do you think it's actually going to work to bring the improvement into our local government? If you can just click on, we just have 3 options. Click on the one that you feel best. Do you feel it's gonna do some wonders for us, for local government, or perhaps to some extent, or a definite no? If you can just kindly click on the option in the next few seconds, and then we will bring in the results and be able to move on forward. So just a few seconds, I'll wait for the next few seconds, and then thereafter we will proceed with our panelists. All right, I think we are all tech friendly. There we go. Well, there are some who are saying no. 5% of us here are saying no. To some extent, 35%, and majority are saying 60%. So National School of Government seems to be on the right path, and we are trusting that what has been shared, obviously from a practical perspective, we'll be able to see some results, and we'll definitely call them in at some point in time to give us some of the results from what they are aiming to implement in discussions that are being taken up even to cabinet as it has been shared. So at this time, let us call in our panelists. I'm going to start with Mrs. Ndlovu to come in just to share her thoughts in regards to what has been just been discussed, presented by Dr. Maja, and then thereafter, Prof. Mayaba will also come in. And as said, we will then see as well in between how we look at the questions and then engage from that point. Mrs. Ndlovu, over to you.
All right. Thank you so much for the invitation, firstly, and I want to greet the other panel members or panelists, as well as other people joining us here. As we said before, my name is Mbali Ndlovu, and I really appreciate being invited here, and I'm grateful. I've listened attentively to Dr. Maja, his presentation, and I was quite happy that from the onset, he touched on the objects of local government, Section 152 of the Constitution. I think our starting point always should be there, because what happens is that how do I put it? He just made sure that we're all on the same mind, that our discussion will be about how we give effect to the objects of local government. And you will recall, at our last webinar, I was asked to talk about the mandate of local government. And what is important there is that we structure our administration and resources towards the needs of the community. So I was then quite impressed when he did that, because it then touches on the administration as well as the political side, what is expected of us. Now, what I've learned and picked up some important points is that lately we may have noticed strong efforts from structures such as the Institute of Local Government, who've been very vocal, ILGM, about professionalizing local government. They've written papers about it, and they are moving strongly towards the idea of professionalizing local government. And Tina, as local government practitioners, were fully in support of that. Now we've got an organization, School of Government, that is also in support and working towards that program. We have SALGA and other political parties that are moving towards that direction. Look at the fact that now councillors are being interviewed for positions as mayors, which is quite good, because it tells you, even at the political level, there is that realization or acknowledgement. We need critical skills, not only from the administration side, but also critical skills, including the political side. The glaring concerns that have been raised there are issues of unqualified and incompetent public servants holding key positions, the state of municipalities, the rise of service delivery process, and other issues, and the lack of skills, especially in those that are called to play oversight role, or such as councillors. They are inadequately equipped with the necessary skills and competencies. If you look at what the Auditor General said herself, she said she reported that municipalities spend most considerate amounts of money on consultants to close the critical skills and capacity gaps. And even the president himself, President Ramaphosa, he did mention in his SONA that the public service is at the core face of government, and lack of professionalism doesn't just impact on service delivery, it also dents the public confidence. So from this presentation, I see an acknowledgement that there is a need for us to move towards professionalizing local government and to apply important interventions that will help us. I also liked the what he raised about the importance of the skills audit. You will recall that our provincial government, KZN, has just completed a province-wide skills audit for local government. Now, the question is, what is going to come out of it? Is it going to be implemented? Are they going to give effect to it? And if they do it, are they partnering with organizations such as, or structures such as the ILGM? Are they partnering with structures such as CIGFARO and to assist? So I was quite interested on that area, and also the need for the ethical culture in local government, ethical culture and ethical leadership, those that are called to serve in local government, whether administration side as well as the political side. Do we have the ethical morale to perform our duties, or we're just there we're just doing our work? But if we have to be professional in local government, we need to start to be accountable and also ethical in the manner in which we perform our duties. I learned a new thing as well, the concepts of professionalism, professionalization, and profession individually, sector, and that I think it's a brilliant concept, and I think that idea must then be moved forward. The issue of administrative and political interface, that needs to be unpacked, and that needs to be supported, because if these two structures are not working together, there is no way we're going to give effect to local government. The issue of security of tenure, I think he spoke about that towards the end of the presentation. You know, we hardly focus on that, but it's quite important. The issue of years, it's fine, but also let's make an example. You also touched on it, the acting that was removed recently. It's quite a sad case. You are sitting there, you are a professional, you are doing your work honestly and diligently, and just because you are perceived that you are not supporting a certain political or you are supporting a certain political party, even if you are not, you then suffer the consequences of that. Now, how are we going to attract suitable, competent professionals in local government when you know you are not secured? Your security will be prejudiced on the basis of perceptions. So who would want to work for local government? So local government will only attract those who are desperate for jobs, but people who are confident about what they believe in and what they are about would never work for an environment where they know they are not appreciated, they are not secured. Let's also talk about the councillors who are supposed to play an oversight role. Their work, they're elected for a period of 5 years, and their role is not an easy one. We know that it's not an easy one. It demands that they must also have expertise, and they must also have knowledge of local government. Remember, they are the ones that are in touch with the community. So I like the fact that he also touched on the role of the councillors in local government, which then means that the councillors must also understand their mandates as councillors and not rely on in administration. So this is because during their tenure, there are high expectations from communities that they are serving, and these are competing with other sectors or stakeholders in the communities, and therefore it is important that they are also capacitated. So I would support the suggestion that they must also be schooled. There must be programs that are developed in order to capacitate them, not only us. So I'm quite happy. I just wanted to do some sort of a summary of how I digested his presentation, and I think it goes a long way, and I'm happy that the ILJM is here. I'm happy that CIGFARO is here, which then means we have a lot of partnerships to give effect to this beautiful view of professionalizing local government. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ndlovu, the Municipal Manager of King George Municipality. But before you go, I know that Prof. Mayaba is so itching to dive into this subject, but I just want to take one question from Sydney Tabang, who asked the question: why is local government failing to implement government policies? Why is local government failing to implement government policies? And what are the measures to be taken if employees then do not comply with the legislative framework in local government? Just your take on that as the Municipal Manager.
All right, thank you. I think the question is twofold. It's failure of local government to implement policies, and the municipal officials doing what? The second part?
What are the measures to be taken if employees in local government then don't comply with the legislative frameworks?
Okay. Thank you. I always say local government is a creature of statute. Everything that we do in local government is highly regulated. Our role as the municipal officials, especially senior officials, accounting officers or municipal managers, is cut out clearly in the Municipal Systems Act as well as in the Municipal Finance Management Act. So ours is to give effect to that. Remember, for the accounting officers, you must perform your duties in accordance with the policy directives of the council as head of administration. So basically, everything that you do is highly regulated. And that's besides the point. The other point is the fact that our role as local government is also regulated by the Constitution or comes from the Constitution. So ours is to give effect to that. Now, the question is, why are we failing? My take is that some of us do not understand why we are called to serve as public servants. First, you must understand, Wuti, I am here as a public servant, and mine is to ensure that people receive basic services. That is a constitutional mandate, that is government policy. Secondly, having said we do not understand and we do not take time to ensure that we know these policies. When council adopts policies, regulatory framework, government policies, are we equipping ourselves enough to understand what is expected of us? So the reason why we're failing to implement the policies is because we do not know the policies. We do not understand the policies. But over and above that, the question is that is there a will to implement these policies? Now, let's look at basic stuff, supply chain management policies. The regulations are there. The councils implement these policies, but why do we have such a high number, a high amount of irregular expenditure, failure to comply, or failure to follow the necessary procedures? It's the will, but also on the side of the politicians. You get these expectations to implement certain mandates, which are contrary to the policy framework. Are we brave enough, as administrators, to speak truth to power? So we are failing to implement government policies because of our lack of understanding, our fear to speak truth to power, but over and above that, we simply do not respect and observe the Constitution of South Africa, which tells us the role of role of government. Now, coming back to your second question, to the second part of the question, which is measures that can be implemented. I mean, there's the new Audit Act, the consequence management. A simple Section 152 requires us to be a democratic and accountable local government, a basic issue of accounting for the decisions that we have taken. We are unable to account and nothing happens to us. So if we know that there are no consequence management, we will continue as if it's business as usual, because there's nobody that's going to hold me accountable. So we need to strengthen consequence management. We also need to ensure that when people take these decisions, they account for the decisions that they take. When people make mistakes, I mean, if we look at irregular expenditure, for an example, unauthorized expenditure and all those things, once it has been picked up, maybe by the Auditor General or maybe by the accounting officer, follow the rule, the process in Section 32 of the MFMA. Why do we not do that? Why does Auditor General have to come back the following year and still find the same problems? So my take is that municipalities must ensure that consequence management happens, and also municipalities must ensure that there is a culture of accountability. But we cannot achieve that if what Dr. Maja spoke about, if we do not have an ethical and principled local government. It starts there. We need to change the organizational culture, the culture in local government. We need to be professional about what we do. Once we achieve that, we will know what is right and what is wrong, and we would not even have a problem when it's time to account. So yeah, I hope I've answered the question. That's just my view.
Thank you very much. I can also see the chat's coming in. It looks like you've also triggered a few things there. So thank you so much, Mrs. Ndlovu. Let me now bring in Prof. Mayaba to come in now in this subject matter, and then he can just share his thoughts as well. And then thereafter, Dr. Pillay, you'll also come in, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ngcobo, and thank you to Dr. Botshabelo, Maja, and Dan Glassen. Mbali, you're still in local government. That's all I can say. I'm going to respond to Dr. Maja and Mbali for some few things that they presented. Dr. Ngcobo knows it's been my passion on talking about professionalizing local government. I don't think it goes far back to years ago. And I think you guys have taken a long time to do that. You should have professionalized ILGM 15 years ago. We wouldn't have this problem of changing municipal managers every time there's a new political regime coming into local government. As old as I am, one of the mistakes that we did when we started drafting the Systems Act and the Structures Act and the Municipal Finance Management Act was to scrap the old Towns Clerk Act. The Towns Clerk Act and its Town Clerks Remunerations Act were more professional than anything else, because it was showing that even in government, politicians are concerned about regulating and professionalizing municipal managers. Yes, the position was permanent. And the reason why the position was permanent was because your councillor was a skilled, trained councillor who knows that the only way to change or to fire a town clerk was based on performance, not on the basis that I don't like you because you are ANC, or I don't like you because you're IFP. If you professionalize IFGM and municipal managers, that means I can apply for the position in Limpopo and be appointed without anyone checking my background of my political affiliation, but checking how professional I am. And can I deliver local government? At the present moment, we cycle municipal managers because we know them and we sit with them in the branches. Let me take it further. With the regulations in the System Act that were declared unlawful, there were some part of the elements that were trying to professionalize local government employees. One of them was to make sure that Section 56 employees are permanent. Unfortunately, politicians refused to do that. But it should have gone further to make sure that even municipal managers are permanent. So that when I fire the municipal managers, I will fire the municipal manager based on performance, not based on my likings. The other element that was in those regulations that were more professional was that if we investigate and find that the municipal manager has a misconduct, either financial or anything, we could bar that municipal manager for 10 years not operating in local government. We failed to do those things. And the reason why we failed, because the power of employing a municipal manager is based on politicians. Those are other things that I want to touch that were very good in the regulations. I hope SALGA will be able to influence the drafting of the new regulations based on what I'm saying. The other part that makes it very difficult for local government to have professional municipal managers. You must remember, municipal managers, they've chosen that as a career. So they'll work for whoever comes in, is the influence of the politics in local government. In some other meetings, where we even had the Minister of Local Government, it became sensitive when I simply stated to them that maybe we need to go back and reconstitute the branch of any political party that produces a councillor. I know that Dr. Lejana Simple said to me, Prof, you are pushing your luck too far. Do you know how many people, if you say that each and every councillor must submit a CV? So that we know that we have good leadership in local government that can have an oversight on officials. But if we don't have good leadership in municipalities, then even the problems that were raised by Dr. Maja on water, electricity, roads that are not repaired, that will continue. Because we have leadership that doesn't understand what is the mandate of local government. To me, it is more critical that we'll be able to fire an official based on performance, not based on liking. The other thing that is wrong in local government is the regulations are simple, stating that you should have a B degree to be employed. What is that? We should be simple talking about a specific qualification that is needed to be a municipal manager, just as we have a specific qualification for a CFO. He must be an accountant. Just as we have a specific qualification for an engineer, he must be a PR engineer. Why don't we have a specific qualification for municipal managers and the staff that reports to the municipal managers? The day we have that, then that's the day we will have professionalized local government. This is an old discussion. I remember in ILGM, Ngcobo was the president of ILGM. The discussion took place in Newcastle. That was years ago. I was still very young. I presented a paper there. And that was not the first time. When some lady from Joburg was the president of ILGM, we presented a paper on that. That's why I'm saying it has taken too long to do that. We should have done that a long time ago. I know Dr. Mbali has presented a good paper on that. We should be moving very fast, but we should be moving very fast with the assistance of SALGA. The last example, we had a municipal manager that had 5 clean audits. 5 clean audits. A new regime takes over. That municipal manager finds himself on the road. The sensitive part is this. Dr. Maja, you are a doctor, you have your PhD, you're going to be interviewed by a person with standard 8. He's a councillor. What does he know about local government? If we don't change that, not the interview only for mayors, but the caliber of a councillor that the community must appoint. My old friend, late Mr. Ferguson once said to me, no, for you to qualify to be a councillor, you just need a barcoded ID. That was a little bit of an insult, but it is the truth. What kind of leadership do we want in councillors? There is a question here about the member of an ESCO who leads a particular portfolio. What skills does that member have for that particular portfolio? The training of a councillor takes 4 years if he's blank. He knows nothing about local government. How are we going to make sure that that councillor learns and understands local government within a 1-year period when it starts? We have new councillors that are on power now. We elected them last year in November. Some of them, they've never been close to local government. The first thing that they implemented was to see how they get their money first in their pocket. Is that the culture that we are creating? So we like it or not, we need our political parties to be on board if we want local government to be more professional. And we need the recruitment from councillors to be clear, who are we recruiting? Who are we appointing to a particular position as a councillor? And what is he going to do? Does he know the mandate of that? Lastly, I've been reading a book about what Dr. Maja said in terms of civil servants in overseas in most of the countries. If you didn't work for if you didn't work for government, you are nothing. But further than that, the power that civil servants have, they don't change civil servants overseas. A civil servant is there because that is his career. I always make an example that one gentleman that used to work for Margaret Thatcher retired 4 years ago. He was 22 years when he started working there. Retired 4 years ago when he was about 65 years, still working in government because his employment, it's got nothing to do with politics. It's about implementing. Further than that, when a new political party takes over, the secretary of the civil servant in England is not changed. I will quote one of them who said to Tony Blair, I have looked at your mandate when you're campaigning, and I'm prepared to help you to implement that. And it was a shock to Tony Blair because he thought he was going to bring his own people. I said, no, you don't. You will bring a number of people. This one doesn't go. He's the secretary. He's going to help you. Can we do that in South Africa? When we talk about tenure, can we do that? Recently, the investigator that was investigating Tony Blair was a civil servant. Do we have civil servant that has the power in South Africa to investigate a sitting president without worried about his job security, doing his job? The worst thing that we do is this term, Kifuna Bantu Bami. I don't know, where does it come? Dr. Maja knows. He works for government. They were sitting in Lehut of the ANC as government officials. They know the police. They would sit again in government Lehut. If another faction comes in, why do we change those people? Because they will implement the very same policies that they discussed. But in South Africa, we have the tendency of changing civil servants. I'm happy you're talking about tenure. Is it 10 years okay? I don't know. We come from local government where we had in the act the legislation that was saying we will not change our municipal managers for a period of 2 years after the elections. Then we change it to 1 year because we thought 2 years was not good for us. We want our own people. What we have done now, the new parties have taken over, have fired all municipal managers. And what is the reason? No apparent reason. We will suspend you and we'll find your mistake later. If we can move away from that culture by professionalizing our employees in local government, we'll have stable local government and will preserve the institutional memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Mayaba. Appreciate it, sir. Once again, you've also triggered some discussions on the chat box from what you've touched on. Let me just go on the last part. Offense, agreeing with your good self, saying we have placed politics above service delivery. That's why we now have to manage the politics so that the work can be done. So thank you so much. You've also, as you're addressing some of the questions as well, thank you very much for that. I will also be bringing now Dr. Pillay. If you can also, Dr. Pillay, in your unpacking of the issues, just see which other questions as well you can address that have been posed and the others that you also shared, so that we can be in a position of hopefully addressing most. I know we can't address all of them, but we will do our level best to address some of the questions. Dr. Pillay, come through, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ngcobo, and thanks to colleagues for putting this webinar together. And thanks to the other presenters and panelists. And I'm going to start off with Prof. Mayaba. He's hitting the nail on the head, in the sense that when we're talking about what's happening in local government, there's too much of political interference in the administration. And this is when we talk about the politics administration dichotomy. Politicians are there to engage with political issues, and the administrators or the public servants are there to deal with the administrative stuff and the implementation stuff thereafter. I think what is lacking is the areas of capacity building. And I'm going to tie this in with what Dr. Maja also mentioned in terms of the requirements. Sadly enough, colleagues, we find that the students that come into universities, that enter the frame of public management, or in particular in local government, are the students that get the 24 to the 26 points. They choose public administration as their last choice, or local government as their last choice. Everybody wants to go into the engineering side. Everybody wants to go into the accounting or the sciences. But nobody sees local government as a calling, and I think that's something that we need to have. Individuals need to have the passion for the work that they want to do. And over a period of time, if we start inculcating that, not at university level, but back in when we talk about preschool or even in primary school, if we can remember. Some colleagues, Prof. Maja, Prof. Mayaba may agree, we had back in the day what we call civic education. And that was done in primary school. So people got to know what is expected. So if we're educating individuals from the bottom up, as from those at the top level, then we will achieve some of those objectives. The issue about having a specific degree or qualification for local government. I want to be open. At our Durban University of Technology, we have a diploma in public management that specializes in local government. And the curriculum is ready for individuals that want to make local government a career for them. Those that are aspiring to become either councillors or, for that matter, public officials. We start off at a diploma level. We have the advanced diploma, and then we have the postgraduate diploma in local government. Students can go into a master's and then ultimately into a PhD level. We have necessary modules that speaks to these to the diplomas that we offer. So we start encouraging people to look at that as a career. I must be also tell colleagues that our curriculum in local government is not put together by academics themselves. We have what we call an advisory board, or the advisory body that informs our curriculum, made up of practitioners. However, in saying that, when we send requests to get practitioners on board, the MMs in some cases that we invite will send officials at a lower level that cannot take decisions. So the official must go back, report to the MM, and then we wait for feedback. Now, what individuals do not understand, a curriculum to get approved takes between 1 to 2 years, in fact, sometimes 3 years. We've recurriculated our program. So we're trying to ensure that the training or the academic work that we're creating for the future public official is relevant and appropriate to the work that they do. We're also bringing something that is very important, and I think we need to talk about this at a later stage, Dr. Ngcobo, the role of the Internet of Things, the big data, artificial intelligence, and smart technology, and what impact does that have? To me, it has paramount importance in terms of the trajectory of technology. Dr. Maja mentioned a few things, and I just want to also pick up on some of the issues that he has mentioned. When we talk about the professional body, I totally support the notion of professional body to look at what is expected of public officials. Like in the medical field where people belong to the professional body, they get CPD. So those points become important. And that will allow public practitioners or public officials to practice for a year. They need to apply. So jointly, together with the National School of Government, higher education institutions need to work very closely. Because when we start working together, then we realize what is our objective and what we hope to achieve. He speaks about pride, and I feel so blessed that he speaks about pride, because that is what is lacking within the public officials. I've seen it, and many of you may see it, the way public officials behave. Professionalism, colleagues, please excuse me for my arrogance, starts with the way we dress and go to work. I've seen public officials with torn and tattered jeans and wearing sandals and t-shirts when they're engaging with members of the public. That's not the way we should behave. Many years, the code of conduct spoke about, please, I'm not wearing a tie, and Dr. Ngcobo, or a coat, but you had to have a tie and a coat when you went to work. So I may be from the old school, but that's what we need to inculcate in people. Now, in saying that, this professional body will see to that. We need to start bringing issues of the partnership and what is the role. The capacity building starts from the bottom, and this is where I think the principal of the National School of Government at one forum speaks about the revolving door. The revolving door where they want to bring practitioners to come into academia, and vice versa, academia to go into government. And in that way, academics become also familiar with what the curriculum and what is actually happening in the workplace, and the value that the practitioners bring to the classroom will add value to the learners. So when they do enter the world of work, they are able and ready for that. Now, I also want to be very honest. To me, to have public servants at any level should be based on merit. If we are doing that, colleagues, we will get the right people doing the job at the right time for the right price. I do believe the salary structures and so on and so forth, but that's something that we have to speak about. You know, we have as part of our curriculum called work integrated learning. It's an important component of a student's life. We have increased it from 3 months to 6 months. Now, here again, this is based on the recommendation of the advisory board that we had that informs our curriculum. And the purpose of this is to ensure that the learner has the right competencies when they enter the workplace. It is not just a tick box exercise. Work integrated learning is credit bearing. A student has to complete a portfolio of evidence. It has to have a reflective diary and a logbook. In saying that, we need the mentors that are in the municipalities to be adequately prepared to share with those learners that are coming in. Because from responses that we've got, and I'm not blaming any municipality and I'm not blaming students or university, they've been telling us that when they do get into the workplace, they are not being mentored. They are being told that we need to go make photocopies, we need to do filing and so on. But I suppose in the past few years, things have changed. We are competing with TVET colleges. As universities of technology, we are competing with TVETs because their work integrated learning is 8 months. Ours is a 6-month program. Comprehensive universities did not have it. It was a kind of an add-on. And then we got the private universities. So the competition to train public officials that become professional it's quite daunting to us. We need to ensure that in that work integrated learning, that there are opportunities and we have careers for these young individuals that are coming in. But in saying that, what value does the municipality add to those learners? It's by the knowledge, like Dr. Ngcobo yourself, when you look at taking on these learners, you are mentoring them, you are nurturing them. And ultimately, we have seen individuals that have been mentored and nurtured do get internships. They do get their temporary employment and then ultimately their permanent employment. We have seen, but yet again, we also need to realize that if we prepare these learners along the way and put them into the path of local government, then you'll get the right public servant. And equally important, when we give these public servants, these young students, the public servants, let's see how we train them, reskill them, and continuously develop them. Allow them a path to grow. Let's not just push them down. Some of them may come up with innovative ideas. Let's acknowledge that. Let's support the creativity and the innovation that they come in. And then another thing that we need to look at in terms of professionalizing the public service. If we need to look at competencies, what competencies are really required of a professional public servant? First of all, for me, they need to have the relevant scope of knowledge. They need to know how to solve the problems, because public service delivery, there are problems. And how do we solve those problems? The ethics of professional and professional is a non-negotiable. It starts from the time we are born, not when we come to university. That should be inculcated in us and we grow with those things. We must have the ability to communicate with the internal stakeholders, meaning people within your municipalities and members of the public. If we're doing that, then we are on the right track. We need to ensure that public officials become accountable for their actions. We have a name badge for public officials. They need to respect the name badge. They need to respect the institution that we're working from. Colleagues, professionalism in local government is qualifications is one thing. Relevant training is another. But the core value of honesty, trust, integrity, accountability, and mutual respect for each and every one of us will go a long way in terms of what we hope to do and what we hope to achieve. Dr. Emmanuel, I think I may have said my bit.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop here for now.
No, thanks. And I'm glad you covered also the issue of students and the work integrated learning, because it becomes very important. As Prof. Mayaba also said, we need the right crop to come in, to local government, and we can't want to fix it there, but we are not going into the foundations of it all. So thank you so much, Dr. Pillay, the head of Department for Public Management and Economics at the Durban University of Technology. So at this time, to my panelists, as well as the main speaker, if you can just, as you're about to do your last closing thoughts, as well as statements that you want to make, but please look at the chat box as well as the questions, so that as you do so, you can also address what has been touched on. But I'm quite certain that most of the issues that have been posed, or the questions that have been posed, have been addressed in some of the statements that have been made. So as you just look into that, if we can just do in a 2 minutes, I won't be more than 2 minutes, that poll once again, which have got 2 more questions that we just want to pose through. If you can just bring them in quickly. And then if you can once again, just select your option in your view. Do you think there is still a need for a 3-tier government system in South Africa? The 3-tier system, meaning that the national, provincial, and local government, do we need that? Because there are others of the view that perhaps we do not need to have provincial. What is the works of provincial government? Perhaps we must either have just a 2-tier system, but that be your choice. If you can just select there whether you feel that we must have a 3-tier system, yes, no, maybe. Let me just also select mine so that you can go into the numbers. I've done my submission, and then we'll also do another question. But before, perhaps we can bring up the results and we go into the next that are there. All right, in your view, wow, this is quite interesting. It's a yes and a no. That's a tie. That's very, very interesting. But well, that's what everyone feels at this point in time. And perhaps those who are unsure are sitting at 14%. Let's bring on the last question. What is your level of trust? This is a very interesting one. Level of trust in our local government, political leadership, being our councillors. Do you completely trust them that they are serving your interests as a citizen of the country? And or perhaps to some extent, or basically no trust at all. What is your take? Do you trust our honorable councillors completely, to some extent, or basically no trust at all? All right, let's bring in the results. I'm trusting that just woke up everyone. Wow, there's no trust at all seems to be the number one. That's 54% of us feel that we do not trust our politicians that are out there. It means that there's a lot of discussions with our political parties. I can assure at some point in time, we're definitely going to have those engagements, not aligned to any party, but all the political parties that are playing a major role in our local government. So it's something to look out for in time to come. So let's do now the last round of discussions as we noting the time. It's now 11:50. So to my speaker and panel members, so as you do, please be precise, just be mindful of time as you do your last closing, and also just see which other very important and critical questions you can then address as you do so. I've noted, Dr. Maja, that you also wanted to answer one question from a good friend of mine, Daniel Nolte, posing a question around the issues of asset management, which is very crucial within our local government space, because without assets, we can't render the service delivery to our communities. If you can just come in firstly, Dr. Maja, and then the other panel members, I'll bring them in. Dr. Maja.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Ndlovu. I appreciate it. I didn't complete my response to that question about asset management. And I think what I wanted to say is that we do have a supply chain management program, which is an accredited program. We've worked on it with National Treasury. And asset management is one of the 5 modules. So it has 5 modules, and we do have a separate module that focuses on asset management, because I think it's an important area. So I agree with the sentiment of the colleague that it's an area that we've not paid enough attention to, and we must do that. So that's that. My last comment, Dr. Ngcobo, I believe we have a societal problem. In South Africa, we're very good at compartmentalizing our conversations. So we talk about local government as if it's something that exists there, and then tomorrow we meet again and we talk about state entities and so forth. I think we have a national problem, and here's my argument. A rainbow nation cannot define what a nation is supposed to be. A nation cannot be a rainbow. There has to be much more to a nation than color. And I think we've not been able to move beyond 1994, when the color issue was central, but was not meant to define who we become. So until we are clear as to what does it mean to be a South African? Who is a South African? What defines being South African? Until we are clear on that, everything else is going to be helter-skelter. Where does it start? It starts in our homes. In the research that I've done with young people in this country, I've been shocked at how many of us who sit in webinars such as this, talk good stuff, are not doing the good stuff of talking to our children at home, and talking to our children at home about who we are supposed to be. Those children are future counselors. Those are the children that are going to be dragging people through the floor in 10 years, 20 years time. So I really hope that one day as a country, we can have this conversation about who we are, what defines us as a nation, so that we are able from the home, from birth, to do the things. By the time we send our children to school, primary school, high school, university, and then they are now counselors, we need to be pushing in one direction. And until we do that, we are going to keep on having problems. Let me stop there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Maja, for that. We appreciate your time as well taken in this instance just to be with us today, as well as the presentation that you had to put together. Truly appreciate all of that. We don't take it lightly that you actually have made such a time and a sacrifice for all of us. Thank you so much for that. And I can see the passion as well and the eldership in you in terms of what we are discussing here today. So at this time, we bring in Prof. Mayaba to come through, and then thereafter, Mrs. Ndlovu, and lastly, Dr. Pillay. Prof. Mayaba, over to you, sir.
Have I unmuted myself?
Yes, you are good now.
Oh, that's good. I want to respond to the last comment by Dr. Maja. He's quite correct when he says we are still back at 1994. And one of my arguments is that maybe we made a mistake in 1994 by not trying to decide what kind of a nation do we want to be in South Africa. Maybe that's where the mistake was. Because we haven't defined ourselves, what kind of a nation do we want to be? Other countries did that. And hence, they have a particular person that they have and they aspire to. One of the biggest questions was that, what morality do we want to impose on our leaders as a society? Have we ever done that? No, because we've not seen that as an important thing. Maybe the day we're able to do that, that's a discussion for another day. Maybe if we're able to do that and say, as a society, what kind of morals do we want to impose on the leaders? Then we'll be able to answer that. But lastly, this is what I want to say. When in this country we had the Black Local Authorities Act, it goes far back. I think it goes to 1980 something. The start of having municipalities in Soweto and in all other areas, like the earlier mayors of Tebehadis and so forth, those who remember that. Universities started to have public administration, and there were a few universities who started public administration. I guess UDW and others. And they were doing that because they thought that they were now educating people who will be working in local government. Those universities that has public admin. As far as I know today, you still have public admin, but does it talk to a student as a public officer? No. Go back again. During the apartheid era, they were recruiting BCom guys and all that. But when they recruited them, they had a government training school, like what Dr. Maja is doing, to train those guys to understand government. Hence, they are DGs. One of them, I will mention by the name, Neil. Yeah, it was Neil or something. He used to negotiate at a political level, but being a DG, because he's trained and he understands foreign policies and all that. Do we have such particular public servants today? No, we don't have. When it comes to local government, Dr. Ngcobo, you know my passion. From the asset management to policy to training. As I said to you, it takes a little bit of time to train a local government councillor to understand that. What are we doing prior, before a person is elected? I want to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Mayaba, a local government expert who has worked a number of years, as you can tell by what comes out from him. But just know, Prof. Mayaba, that I know you are about to go to retirement. You are definitely going to be called in. So yeah, just consider that semi-retirement of some sort, because we definitely still need your thoughts going forward. So at this time, if you can just allow us, for those who will have a commitment at 12, just know that we're just going to run slightly over time, but I trust you can all see the importance of these discussions, and I don't want to stifle that. So if you can just allow us for those extra few minutes, but then I'm hoping not more than 10 minutes, but we'll try by all means to finish before then, because I want to get all the insights from our two other panelists. And also I can see that it's happening on the chat box. We are noting all of these. We are also going to be transcribing all of these notes, but also making available the recordings of this session. So for those who have registered and gotten their links, we will then ensure that we also disseminate the video recordings. So let me bring in, I almost said Dr. Ndlovu. There's so many doctors here and professors. Mrs. Ndlovu, I know at some point in time you'll get there, and because you're quite a well-learned in the legal fraternity. So let me just hand over to you to come through for your last thoughts. Mrs. Ndlovu.
Thank you, Dr. Ngcobo. Kuthiwa izwi liyadala. So babelela lapho. Thank you so much. Colleagues, having listened to the speakers, the panelists, Dr. Ngcobo, I must say that what needs to happen is that ILGM, SALGA, CIGFARO, the department, School of Government, we need to move forward. We need to work vigorously in order to give effect to these beautiful ideas that we have spoken about. So, Prof. Mayaba said this should have been done 15 years ago. Sibu 2022, we're still talking about the same thing. So we need to move vigorously to ensure that we professionalize local government. Secondly, the issue of future leaders, I think Dr. Pillay touched a little bit about those that are behind us, the little ones that are still at school. We need to really as local government need to partner with the institutions of higher learning, assist them. I mean, he has raised an issue. Municipal managers are sending junior staff to influence the curriculum. What message are we sending? Are we even serious about what we do as local government practitioners? The systems are there, the resources are there. We have adequate professionals and skilled seniors within local government who can influence these things, who can go there in the institutions of higher learning and ensure we impart the knowledge so that we grow the little ones, we grow the future leaders, we grow the future practitioners of local government, and we have them interested. We just need to put up these to make sure that these efforts are intake. And also about providing opportunities to students in municipalities so that they learn and understand what local government is all about. The internship programs, the 6 months programs. But what I've noticed is that we hardly even we're not even willing to provide space for them to go and practice there and to get that experiential learning. Even if they are there, they become glorified clerk. They are not allocated mentors. They are not allocated. Nobody even monitors their progress. So if we are interested in making sure the children that are behind us do eventually become practitioners in local government, there must be a willingness and a buy-in on the side of the municipality to ensure that we when they are given these opportunities, we equip them with the necessary skills and everything that will make them qualify at the end of the day. But lastly, Dr. Ngcobo, we must make sure we promote an ethical and accountable local government. That's it from my side. Thank you.
No, Siyabonga kakhulu, Mrs. Ndlovu, the Municipal Manager at Cetshwayo District Municipality. Thank you so much once again for your time that you have given us this morning. Now let me hand over to Dr. Pillay from DUT. Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Ngcobo. Just to pick up on some of the comments very quickly. First of all, and coming through the chat box, we need to start educating community. We have ward committees. Many of the individuals in the ward committees do not know what is expected of them, even though municipalities send them for training programs. So if we start empowering them, they will also be able to start questioning the councillors. The councillors will in turn be able to question the officials, and it should be done in a proper manner. The issue about the curriculum, yes, we have addressed the curriculum from the past years. We are now targeting specific areas that deal with local government. So I offer at my department specific programs that talk to local government. We could also engage in what I call the public participation training program, which can articulate into our highest certificate. We need to look at prior learning because many individuals have the knowledge. They may have attended short courses, so we can put that together in a portfolio of evidence and give them credit for the work that they have done or the courses that they have attended. So they have a bit more knowledge to perform their duties in a better way. In saying that, this platform that we have right now is kind of the stepping stone that we want to use. I think we need to start making this kind of compulsory, if we can do that, to get councillors to come on board, to get public officials to attend. We're not asking for a lot of their time. They could be done on a rotational basis. So we'll be definitely getting involved and we're moving in the right way. The idea of starting this professional body, as I mentioned, the time to do is now because tomorrow never comes. And if we are serious about it, then Emmanuel, you and I, the profs and the other docs will sit together and we can start initiating this professional body. Something that we could start with and get the different individuals to buy in. And yes, we could look at the CETAs. They have a lot of money. I'm also proud to announce that LG CETA is visiting me on Wednesday to look at how can I get my students seed funding or stipends, because that is one of the challenges that many people have. The students want to stay in the city centers. When they come to DUT, they want to stay within the Durban area. Many of them do not want to go back to the areas that they come from. We need to start promoting rural development because that is where the opportunity is going to come from. Inevitably, it will help. The monitoring of students, as Mrs. Ndlovu mentioned, and what is happening, sadly enough, it is a two-way process. And if we monitor both student, both staff, and we're not here to police individuals, but the idea of working collaboratively to achieve a common goal makes a whole lot of sense. So colleagues, thank you for your time and for allowing us to get involved with this. We hope the participants will join us for our further engagements and as we go through this journey together. Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel, and thank you to the colleagues and participants.
Thank you so much for tuning in, participating, and providing all the comments and everything that has transpired today. To the speakers and panelists, once again, thank you so much for your time and sharing your thoughts today. So everyone, keep well and stay safe, and may God bless you. See you again next week, same time of 10 a.m. till hopefully 12 p.m. Siyabonga.